Let's get uncomfortable. Welcome into Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris. Thank you for joining us.
And on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. How was the mainstream media largely ignoring President Barack Obama and his cohorts' complicity in the Russian collusion hoax? Finally, now we're getting answers on this. Will President Trump DOJ push to indict President Obama and his merry band of cohorts? We're going to talk about that today on the show.
Also missing from this headline is Hillary Clinton, who had a major role of this. So I'm very curious why we are focused on Obama. It does very much feel like, yeah, we've been on this one. What's new here? Why do we want Obama now? Okay, we're going to talk to George Papadopoulos, who was one of the first to be arrested in the Russiagate scandal. We're excited to break this down. Also, Epstein. So many questions still remain to be answered. And the Department of Justice is now saying, oh, well, we'll talk to Ghislaine Maxwell. Didn't you already do that before you put her in prison? That's kind of weird, right? Are we?
No,
what are we supposed to make of the fact that she's been indicted and yet there are stones left unturned? What do we do with that, Clayton? Also, the Department of HHS is saying, yes, organs are harvested on live people in the hospital. What? Another point for conspiracy theorists. We're going to talk about that.
Exactly. So we get that and so much more on the show today. Thank you, guys. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. Please hit that subscribe button. And we should mention we do have a daily newsletter that you can subscribe to as well. Just go to redacted.inc. So we're going to get to George Papadopoulos here in just a moment. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Shopify. We are not only sponsored by Shopify, but we use that Redacted store. What is Shopify, you ask? Well, it's a way to launch your business to the world, whatever that might be. If you have, like we do, mugs and T-shirts and Redacted souvenirs, you could launch that on, well, you can't launch Redacted store. That's for us to do. You launch your store on Shopify and they give you everything you need to grow your business. You don't have to know graphic design. You don't have to know back end. You don't have to know e-commerce. They do it all for you and they give you 24/7 support. So you can take your idea to the market and make $1 million, $1 billion. The sky's the limit with Shopify. They will take you from your first sale to your millionth. And they will give you a 1-month trial period if you go to shopify.com/redacted. One more time, that's shopify.com/redacted. They have everything they need. It's packed with helpful tools. They also use AI to make your store even better than the human brain can conceive of. So take advantage of these tools, own your own business, launch yourself to the world. Shopify.com/redacted.
Well, unbelievable news now from the DNI. Of course, Tulsi guys know this story over the past few days. As we now know, the Obama administration was directly involved in covering up and pushing the Russia collusion narrative, even after they knew it was a lie. In response, former President Trump calling for a DOJ investigation into these allegations. This morning, Trump was asked directly, who should the DOJ criminally target? And he didn't mince words. Listen.
From your perspective, who should the DOJ target as part of their investigation? What specific figures in the Obama administration?
Well, based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper, the whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room. Right here, this was the room. This is much more beautiful than it was then, but that's okay.
Now, to help us unpack all of this, we're joined by George Papadopoulos, his former foreign policy advisor to President Trump's campaign in 2016, someone who found himself at the center of the Mueller investigation, of course, had the deep state targeting him. Back in 2019, Papadopoulos released this book, Deep State Target, How I Got Caught in the Crosshairs of the Plot to Bring Down the President. He was, of course, pardoned by Trump in December 2020. And George is joining us now. George, welcome back to the show. Good to see you again. Thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be with you both. Thank you.
Why, after so many investigations, this is the question that stands out. Natalie and I were talking about this before the show. Why do we not have this information declassified years ago? Like, why are we just now learning about this thanks to Tulsi Gabbard at the DNI? What do you make of this?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think the main reason this stuff was willfully suppressed is because I think it exposes a Western intelligence scandal that basically will uproot the American public intelligence services, both domestically and in NATO, because I think a lot of NATO Western Western-oriented countries were involved in Obamagate against President Trump, including the Five Eyes groups, other countries in Europe, potentially Ukraine. And then, of course, you have President Obama's fingerprints all over this operation, along with the CIA director, the FBI director, the former DNI. So this is the biggest intelligence scandal that the world has ever seen. And I use the word world because there were other countries involved. So, of course, given the nature of this issue, it was in the interest of the deep state or the CIA, the FBI, some of these special counsels like Durham and Horowitz and Mueller to cover it up in the hope that Trump would never be reelected, that MAGA would essentially evaporate after the January 6th issue, and that we would never hear about this ever again, and that history would have been ridden with falsities, innuendo, and by the Obama administration's fake narrative. So that's, I guess, a long-winded answer into why I think this has been covered up. I think there's a lot needs to come out before we have the full picture.
Now, the book, The Plot Against the President, does a great job of laying out who did what. A lot of it started with the Steele dossier, which was funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign. So why do you think now we are so focused on Obama? Whereas Hillary Clinton wasn't even in that Brady Bunch graphic that the president tweeted. Why not? Where's she missing in this? She is just as guilty, if you know the true story.
Well, here's what I think. I think when you are competing in politics, you go after your opponent with political opposition research. You try to dirty that person up. And what the Steele dossier really was a financed oppo hit piece against Trump that a campaign does. They spend millions of dollars trying to dig up anything that they possibly can. We saw this during, various confirmation hearings and during the Supreme Court hearings with Kavanaugh and others. Obviously, it's going to happen during a presidential campaign season. So I don't think it's illegal for what Hillary did. What was illegal was for the intelligence community, along with a sitting president and the CIA, to take that information and to distribute it within FISA warrants that were illegally obtained. That is defrauding a FISA court and basically defrauding the U.S. government and usurping civil liberties. So what Hillary did was a dirty trick, and of course it was wrong, but she was running up against Trump. The people that really were involved in illegal activities were the people that disseminated that fake information in order to surveil illegally a presidential campaign. And that's exactly what happened. And Barack Obama was the one running the show.
Do you believe that President Obama himself was aware of the FBI's targeting of the Trump campaign staff like yourself? Or do you think that this was just limited to the intelligence officials like Brennan and Clapper?
I think that this operation, and I'm telling you, and I've been saying this for years, going back to 2018, that if we actually declassify the origins of how this entire scandal started, it goes back into 2015, not 2016. In order for this type of momentum to have been generated to target individuals of a rival presidential campaign from various governments, intelligence agencies, the domestic intelligence agencies, there's only one man or woman on planet Earth who has that power to cultivate that type of force to target political opponents. That person was Barack Obama, President Barack Obama. I think President Barack Obama had his fingers all over this going back long before Crossfire Hurricane ever emerged. If you actually remember, what Special Counsel John Durham's conclusions were two conclusions. One, that Crossfire Hurricane did not start the way that Mueller or Horowitz said it did. And secondly, he said that the FBI was involved in illegal activities. Besides that, he could go much further. We now have evidence that Obama was involved because Gabber decided to declassify this information and to deliver it to the public. Look back at this, when history writes this story for the first time ever in a proper fashion, you're going to understand that President Obama started this in 2015, likely looking at every other presidential campaign that had a chance to defeat Hillary Clinton. Those campaigns were targeted with domestic and global intelligence. That continued through 2016 and into the Trump presidency. And I think if President Trump decides to really go after Obama, he's going to have to declassify the files of why Durham said the investigation didn't start the way that Mueller or Horowitz did. If he decides to simply stick to this December meeting and continue thereafter, it's likely going to make Obama looks like somebody bad, somebody that was trying to meddle in the election or to basically stop Trump's rise. But I don't think they're going to deliver any handcuffs.
Now, speaking of handcuffs, because you were targeted by the Mueller investigation, which most of us should feel, and I have for a long time since I've understood this scam, really upset that we were baited to be misled about Trump's Russian connections, that it took up millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars and so much energy out of the room during the first Trump administration. But you were actually targeted and sent to prison. General Flynn also had his life dragged through the mud, and he sued. What are you going to do now that this is proven that you were targeted for political purposes?
Well, certainly all options are on the table right now. I have a great team of lawyers looking at this situation within a scrupulous manner. I think if we have more information as declassified about exactly who was targeting me, why, what their motivations were, whether it was conducted in an illegal manner, then certainly there likely will be some legal recourse. I think numerous people have legal cases, but I'm still waiting to see where this goes because while this is a good start, as I explained a little bit ago, I think there has to be a lot more that has to be declassified and delivered to not only people like myself, General Flynn, but for the American people, most importantly, so that we finally understand how deep and corroded this scandal really was and how high it went, besides Obama having this bizarre meeting that was declassified.
I mean, the American people were robbed of a presidency that they voted for. And Trump's Department of Justice was caught up in this fake story perpetrated by Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden. It is treason. Do you think that we're going to see arrests? What do you hope will happen?
When I saw both John Brennan and Jim Comey simultaneously being placed under criminal investigation, the first thing that came to my mind was that there was a criminal conspiracy involving both the FBI and the CIA. Now, people ask, how was the CIA even involved? How could Brennan be involved in a criminal conspiracy just because he decided to alter some facts that Obama pressured him into? And the reason I think that Brennan is involved is because the CIA with these other agencies and these governments, they involve themselves directly to surveil the Trump campaign and people associated with the Trump campaign. That's why the investigation started in London. If you go by the facts that have been presented to the world, the investigation started in London. There were operatives in London that basically conjured this thing up. That later on was passed to people like Jim Comey, who created the momentum domestically to get the fake warrants, to spy domestically, and then to bring on Mueller to cover up what Comey did, and then to create the silent coup. So I think Brennan and Comey are really the ultimate targets of this investigation, and they're going to likely use their testimony or what they did to dirty up Obama. But unfortunately, based on the presidential immunity and whether President Trump and Gabbard want to go all the way and declassify the real facts, I don't think Obama is going to be touched in a criminal matter. If they do declassify all the relevant information about things that I explained going back into 2015, about how Obama with the CIA was basically creating this fake story to spy on people, you could probably touch Obama too. Right now, I think Brennan and Comey are the targets.
I think you're right about that. And, so many people in the chat room right now are just saying no one ever gets arrested. No one ever gets arrested. And I think we're just fed up with this. This is treason at the highest level. I want to put up a graphic that you tweeted today. Obamagate is this giant cruise ship, the size of this thing, and Watergate, this like little dinghy floating out there. I mean, that's how big this is. I think the American people we need people to be arrested. We need perp walks. We need people in handcuffs.
But at the very least, there should be a reputational consequence to having done this for the Democrats. The same way, and I don't mean to yell at you, I'm just mad. Like, this should be an open and shut case of corruption within the Democrats. We saw it a year ago, just a year ago this week. Kamala Harris cooed Joe Biden in order to take over the presidential election. How much corruption can people observe? That's not to say Republicans are blameless, but come on. Like, when's this slime going to stick to them?
Well, that's a great question. And look what happened when they weren't held accountable in 2016. They started off with the impeachment 1.0, impeachment 2.0, the CIA once again interfering in the 2020 election by willfully suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story. So the CIA has basically meddled in the last 3 elections because they weren't held accountable in 2016. So I completely agree with you. If they aren't prosecuted, if people at the CIA, the FBI, or Brennan and Comey, and these people that were running the show, and likely Obama, I argue that Obama was directly involved. I think Obama was the one that actually initiated this to make sure that Hillary's opponents were either dirty up, spun, and assured that Hillary would win. And if Hillary didn't win, that person, whoever would have ascended to the Oval Office, would have been crippled from day one. That's exactly what Mueller and Comey tried to do. It failed, fortunately, because we fought back. So obviously, with all of these shenanigans that went into this, all the illegal activities, the fraudulent FISA warrants, the illegal surveillance, the breaking in, you mentioned Watergate, and you showed the post that I made on X. Watergate was basically a break-in. This was an electronic break-in by the government to spy on a rival presidential campaign to tilt an election. So obviously, this is much bigger. So if these people aren't prosecuted or indicted, or at least everything being declassified, because you mentioned that this is about reputations as well, if you don't want to prosecute them, at least declassify everything so that you can allow the American people to understand really what happened, and it could likely tilt the balance of power going into the next election, potentially the midterms of next election. If you don't, people are going to ask themselves, is this a cover-up because Epstein wasn't, the Epstein files weren't released? A lot of people are asking that question. Are you distracting from that? Is there something else going on? Are you going to go all the way? I think President Trump will go all the way. And I think the American people believe that too.
George Papadopoulos, thank you so much. I know crazy times right now, and hopefully you get some answers on this front as well. George, great to see you. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Also, I might just point out, it was stupid. Like, it just was a stupid thing to use the Steele dossier to make this Russian connection. I think most people don't know this, but Christopher Steele had been hired before this to find evidence of corruption in the FIFA World Cup and how Russia had won that. He came up empty and he was like, well, I'll just go and try and find something. Like, he just kept selling this same dumb story. Yeah. And we were dumb enough to buy it over here across the pond. So how long are we going to fall for these stupid schemes? Like, enough about a Russian connection. I can't take it.
Yeah, no, they're trying to drag it up again. So hopefully we get answers on that. And hopefully people in the chat are wrong. Some people in the chat are saying, I'm not holding my breath. I don't think anyone's going to be arrested. I don't know. We'll see this time. But I hope so. I hope so. All right, we've got more news to get to. We're going to talk about Epstein. We're going to talk about why is the DOJ question Ghislaine Maxwell? That's something that should have happened before. Like, people saying, "Oh, Ghislaine Maxwell, get ready. She might be Epsteining herself really, really soon." We're going to talk with Lionel Nation about that in just moments. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Kickoff, because hey, you're gearing up to make a major financial purchase because interest rates are starting to come down, but you don't have a great credit score. Well, then anything that you finance, you're going to pay more for if you have a mediocre or bad credit score. But how do you boost your credit score? Well, with our friends over at Kickoff. Kickoff has great $5 a month plans or more where you are paying into your regular plan and you are basically doing exercise for your credit score. And so you are making real purchases that go on your real credit score and you are showing fiscal responsibility. So you can check them out at getkickoff.com/redacted. That's getkickoff.com/redacted. You can get your first month for just $1. They have basic plans, which are most popular, starting at $5 all the way up $1 a month, and it gives you a credit line for credit building, and they report it to the major 3 credit bureaus, so you have a better credit score month by month, because again, you're going going to apply for a financial product and you don't have a good credit score, you're going to pay more than $1 a month. I tell you that. You're going to pay a premium every month for that low credit score. So do your workouts on getkickoff.com, your credit score workouts. Go to getkickoff.com/redacted. They are the #1 credit building app out there. So make sure you tell them that we sent you. All right. Well, things are heating up in the Epstein case again. Are you going to get excited, Clayton? I'll give you a second to get excited again. Yeah, that's what that looks like?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get a lot of answers this time. Yeah.
Okay, you hold your breath. I will continue to explain. Attorney General Pam Bondi now says she's open to interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell, despite claiming that she hadn't heard before about Epstein's ties to intelligence. Okay. Meanwhile, Congress, in order to avoid voting on Epstein disclosure, is just going to go to break. They're going to take the whole week off because they cannot vote on Epstein disclosure that Democrats tacked to the bills that they already wanted. Now, in court, a judge is holding up the unsealed documents of grand jury testimonies because the defendant might object, they say. But Epstein is dead. Who can object on his behalf? So the layers of protection around this man persist long after his death. Joining us to discuss is Lionel from the Lionel Nation YouTube channel, a New York lawyer and prosecutor. Lionel, thank you for coming. You know that I have so many questions that I put together a lightning round because I don't think we can get to them. And Lionel, you know I love you, can give long answers, and I appreciate that.
He gives lawyer answers.
Let's go. Lawyer answers? Yeah. So shall we do the lightning round first, and then we're going to get to your in-depth questions. Okay.
Go.
Try and answer these in one sentence or 2 sentences max, and we'll see what we can do. Okay. Attorney General Bondi says she hadn't heard about Epstein's links to intelligence. Is that plausible?
Absolutely.
Okay. Maxwell being revisited. How'd they convict her with so many unanswered questions? Is that possible?
He was charged with conspiring with Epstein. Hers was not with anybody else. Hers was not. She was charged with about 3 or 4 different victims regarding transporting them, luring them in for particular sexual tryst. Like hers was a different. It wasn't human trafficking. Yes, the jury heard the case, and found her guilty. I think she was acquitted of just 1. So yes, there was nothing wrong with that statute. They believed victims.
Oh, now to unseal the grand jury testimony, the court's asking if the defendant objects. Since Epstein is dead, who could object on his behalf?
That's a misnomer. The defendant objects because it doesn't really matter, because it doesn't belong to the defendant. It's the subject of the investigation. She's also the defendant, because in that particular case, she would have to say, and other people as well, because remember, there were victims of this. There were victims whose testimony, very, very sensitive testimonies, were revealed. And if you look at the criteria of the courts, it's not just objection of the defendant, but the totality of the possible objections and the sensitivity of the matters. That could be a problem. I don't think they're going to release it at all.
Okay. All right. So then that's a fun little monkey exercise we're doing. How is Epstein's lawyer allowed to write an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal? Isn't he still bound by confidentiality?
What lawyer are we talking about? Mr. Dershowitz, or are we?
Yes. In the Wall Street Journal piece where he said, there's no clients. I've seen it. I would have known, he said over the weekend.
First, I don't know why anybody just doesn't tell him, just shut up. Every time he says anything, it makes it worse. That's number one. Number two, the question you should ask, the legal question is, does the attorney-client privilege survive the death of the client? And the answer is yes. We saw that during the Vince Foster case. So you're right. Just because a client has died doesn't necessarily mean. But he would be saying, he's saying nothing that in any way violates or deals with matters that were held in confidence, but matters around the case. But I still go back to what I said originally. Alan, please shut up.
Right. Okay. Now, one more question in the lightning round. The federal prosecutor Acosta said that he was told to go easy on Epstein. Who would have the authority to tell him that? Who could have
the Department of Justice? And the fact that he would say that is mind-boggling. And the fact that they would intervene regarding a state Remember, it was the Palm Beach authorities who brought this to the attention, how they intervened. But it goes to show you, Natalie, the idea at the time, the federal government was just with impunity. They didn't care how it looked. They didn't care what you thought. They just bulldozed. And Acosta, by the way, by saying that it was other a higher pay grade who told him to do this, the fact that he said that shows the mindlessness of him. If you do that, you keep your shot.
Well, I believe in the context he said it was when he was being interviewed for the incoming Trump administration this time around, as in, this could come back to bite us. Why did you do that? That is, it's still, and then he's sort of walked it back since, but the fact that it's been reported that he said it is damning enough for us to want answers. Okay, so let's go into some in-depth questions. I want to talk about what we could learn from the grand jury testimony, because we had one in 2008 and one in 2019. The 2019 one was about the 2008 one, where it was just Epstein abusing young girls. There were no clients in that first case. So what's the most we could learn from the 2019 grand jury testimony, which seems to be the one they're trying to give us?
First, let's get rid of this term client, because that's incorrect. He's not a pimp. These weren't his clients and that sort of thing. Also, these words, I heard you find folks using the word treason. There was no aiding and abetting another foreign enemy. Treason's not the word. Client's not the word. List is not the word. Black book is not the word. Client logs is a very simple thing. What was your entire, of the 1,000, roughly 1,000 women who were considered victims, of the 1,000, who were they, number one, not to be revealed to the public, number one. Number two, how many of them wanted this case to be brought out again? This is sometimes 20 years old. Some people have settled, some have moved on, some have families. So you have to consider what they want. Number three, how many of them actually identified individuals who had sex with them when they were minors? This is what I want to know. Next, how were those cases not prosecuted? And let me also say something to you. This is going to burst your bubble, so to speak. Is there anyone on the planet today who has ever said that he ever had anything happen to him or her because of some type of extortion information that was threatened to be revealed? Is there anyone who's ever made that claim? No. We anticipated. We think that's what it was. I submit to you that this is a limited hangout, that the real issue, the real nuts and bolts of the Wexner, the Epstein cabal, the settlements with the J.P. Morgan and the Deutsche Bank had to do with the most complex money laundering machinations you can imagine. This is trifling. The other issue was, what about his French counterpart, who was also found dead in a cell in a French jail? That's the one that's completely forgotten. Focus on that. These are red herrings. Everybody thinks that somehow you're going to have some list somewhere that's going to reveal, let's say, just a Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, something that you're going to say, aha, look at the list of these predators and look how they got away. That doesn't exist. The FBI has lists of the 1,000, roughly 600, 900 victims. They have each said, can you identify somebody who violated you? Remember, if you're not underage, it doesn't matter. I don't think trafficking is going to work in this force, fraud, or coercion. We're looking for minors. How many of them actually involved minors? That's what we want. Not client lists, who flew on a plane. Ethel Kennedy was on a plane, for God's sake. Stephen Hawking. That's not what we want. We want to know, was there some type of a sex trafficking network specifically involving minors? If they're not minors, if it was consensual, as crude as this might sound, we're not interested. I'm suggesting that list is so small, but it's available, not through grand juries. That's not what you want. It's the investigative notes, the investigation that the FBI's had since day one. They've got it right there. And the fact that Pam Bondi can't pick up the phone and say, tell me what you've got. She's the Attorney General. And finally, let me just get this out. My rule, if I was a president, nobody goes on Fox ever again unless you're announcing the arrest and hopefully the conviction of somebody. Stop telling everybody what you're doing. Stop telling about how we've referred this case to the Department of Justice, how we're looking at Comey and Brennan. Stop it. Why? And Tulsi Gabbard, shut up. Why are you going on Maria Bartiromo? You're not a podcaster anymore. You work for the federal government. You keep it quiet. You don't say anything. You make these people scared. Rudy Giuliani never announced until the indictments were made when he indicted the commission. Why do we know every single step? We're alerting them. We're getting them ready. And the only way we're going to get anything done is if you go back in time and try to extricate and unravel this inherent entrenched corruption that goes from the top to the bottom of the entire federal system. Federal judges, clerks, people in the DOJ, people who are actually in the federal deep state. You can talk about this all day long. This is critical. There is no way you're going to be able to change this unless you go back and undo and clean house and basically remove the virus that has infected the entire justice system. Good luck, Pam Bondi.
Right. Okay, so a lot like what you told us about the Diddy case is no one was held there without their consent. A lot of these people were overage. It was dirty and gross, but it was not illegal. So what you're saying we could see, because there was accusations that Epstein had girls as young as 12, but a lot of times he used Lex Wessner's connections to Victoria's Secret. Those girls were not minors, and he could have tangentially invited Bill Clinton around to hang out with girls in their underwear. But since they were of age, can you get my daughter out of here? Go. I'm sorry. My daughter just walked in here and I cannot let her hear this. Because they were of age, then it's possible there were compromising situations, but not used so overtly.
Go back to the modeling in France, the Brunel connection. Those models.
Right.
Modeling that's where I would look. But let me tell you something. The question I would ask right now if I were Pam Bondi, who wants to testify now? Who wants to come forward and go and testify before a grand jury or anybody and to explain how you were mistreated, how you did not deserve or receive justice? That's where we start with people who are ready, willing, and able to speak now, who are underage. You've got, believe me, more than you can deal with. You don't need to go back and put out binders and lists and what. Stop telling people what you're doing. It looks clumsy. It looks like you don't know what you're doing. And by the way, is Pam Bondi, and I think the world of her. Is Pam Bondi hiding? Why are these minions speaking on behalf of her? And finally, Natalie, why is everybody announcing everything on Fox News? I've never seen anything like this. Why are you telling people what you're doing? And why are you changing, perhaps, you're poisoning the water for a potential jury? You're basically setting up motions for change of venue. Why are you doing this? And going back to what you said about Ghislaine Maxwell, what are you going to offer her? Get me out of here. Yeah. Compassionate release. Why do I speak to you? Are you going to reverse this? I'm not going to say anything to you. And if you think the real reason what she's concerned about is her parents or her family, that's what, and nobody's going to protect her on that. She would probably say, no way. Look, for all we know, she's got millions in some Cayman Island account somewhere. She's going to do her time, keep her mouth shut, and that's it. And I'm going to come and open this up again. I'm gonna unravel this again. And remember one thing, this would have never happened had Pam Bondi not gone on TV and said, I have on my desk or whatever it is, a file or a list
binders,
or a document.
All of that. Yeah.
Nothing would have happened. Nobody thought about this. We forgot it. It was in bed. This was an unforced error. This is an own go. What's the point of this? Just let it go. Or if you're going to investigate it, don't announce it. Do it quietly, behind the scenes. And then surprise them with an indictment. Surprise them with an arrest. Don't tell people what you're doing. Don't alert everybody. Because if you don't follow through with a conviction, you look like you failed again.
Right. And so even if we put aside the perversion, the sexual perversion, the young girls, all the assault, can we get answers about the money, right? And so in the Daryl Cooper interview with Tucker Carlson last week, he made it quite clear that Epstein knew how to traffic weapons, how to traffic secrets for multiple governments. And so that explains what I wrote here is these irregularities, how the FBI raided his island after his death. The plea deal was structured to block future prosecutions and co-conspirators. Fiscal records still remaining. Victims not being noticed. So it's the money here. And let's address this last. How in the heck has the Justice Department failed to interview Lex Wessner? Is there any excuse for that? Because clearly the money behind the sex is just as important, even though we're very interested in protecting the girls.
I cannot believe that no one has not interviewed him or talked to him. But let me leave with this question. What do you think the chances are of somebody saying, okay, we want to send some agents to do what real and find out what the connection was there regarding intel? Good luck. What do you think that's going to, you think that's going to come through? You think anybody's going to be chomping at the bit? You think President Trump is going to say, let no stone unturned. Baby, come clean. What did you, look, let's be real. We're all adults. We know what's going on right now. We know the climate. We know what you can and can't say. It's going to hit a point and then stop. You know and I know what this is all about, or what it was then. Final question. If this really were the Mossad, like everybody was saying, do you think that they would allow 20 years worth of hard drives and data to sit around collecting dust before it was seized by the FBI? Don't you think you would seize this as they were accrued? This stuff, that story doesn't even make sense. I'm not even sure if they had any tapes, had any files, terabytes of data. You might have had a lot of surveillance video and ring camera stuff or whatever the equivalent was then. I think if you really get down to it, this story is so simple. It's made to sound complex. Talk to the victims right now who want to come forward, have them testify before Congress about what happened, have them tell the world how they were shunned or ignored, about how they were minors and how they have been forgotten. Start with that. Don't worry about a grand jury and logs. Talk to the victims who want to speak now, who have been ignored here. Simple.
Okay. I mean, again, that's one part of it, but it will not help us understand the funding bit. It will not. And you're right. The Lex Wessner bit.
You're never. It ain't going to happen.
That is what the government's protecting more than the sex crimes is the money, the intelligence.
Not so much as they're protecting. They're just not interested, because with that comes other people saying, if I speak about this, do you want me to talk about intel connections? Do you really want to? Do you? Well, yes. You do. But ask the people. Ask if President Trump or DOJ or Kash Patel or whoever's in charge this week goes to CIA and says, "Are you folks willing to come clean with this?" They'll say, "Hell no! What are you doing? We're an intelligence agency too."
That's our whole shtick.
But that's what we do. It's like, do you understand that? Let me listen. It's nice to have these podcasters playing, Law and Order here, but I don't think they understand how this thing goes. This is deadly business. This is James Bond to the nth degree. This is serious stuff. This is life and death. And 1 minute they're walking around on, Joe Rogan, and the next thing they're making intel secrets with Dan Bongino threatening to quit. By the way, did he ever quit? I'd have canned his ass a long time ago. Everybody trying to get their Fox News, trying to burnish their resume so that when they leave office, they'll have a gig later on. I hate to be so cynical, but if you're in the government and you swear allegiance to the Constitution in this republic, you also owe duty to keep your freaking mouth shut and go home and do your job and be quiet. You're intel. You're secret. Right. This is what you're supposed to do. Omerta, keep your mouth shut.
All right. Well, we're going to stick on this. Thank you so much, Lionel. We got a lot covered in a short period of time. The lightning round worked. So it's always a pleasure to see you.
And who called Diddy? Who called Diddy?
You did. Victory lap. All right.
Hello.
Victory lap on that, too.
He was 100% correct.
Yeah.
Lionel, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you, my friends.
Yeah.
All the best.
People are like, no, that's impossible. Really? Is that going to happen? Diddy's going to walk free?
Oh, no. Yeah, he got that one.
Lionel nailed it. Lionel nailed it. When everyone's calling him crazy. No, he's going to go to prison for life. Nope.
No,
not going to happen.
Didn't happen.
All right. Hey, we're going to talk about this organ harvesting story, something we've been covering here on this show for quite a while. The United States government involved in organ harvesting, trafficking, and taking live individuals who are still alive and taking their organs out of their body while they're still alive.
I'm not
Confirmed.
dead.
I'm not dead yet. This is literally happening at the hands of the United States
I
government.
think I'll go for a walk.
And now the Health and Human Services is now confirming this. We will talk about that in a moment. But first, ladies and gentlemen, our bodies are under attack, not just from the air that we breathe or the food that we eat. We're being exposed to mRNA technology injected into our food supply, spreading through shedding, and now 5G radiation saturating our we still don't fully understand. I just did a deep dive interview today specifically on this problem, and the guest that I talked about said we are facing like an extinction level event right now with the amount of things that are being bombarding our lives with. Threats to biology at a cellular level, weakening immunity, inflaming our systems, damaging the control center of our health. That's why we take Kimchi 1 from our friends at Brightcore Nutrition. Each capsule is packed with over 900 strains of probiotics, live enzymes, antioxidants to flush out toxins. The best part is you'll get 25% off right now. Use the code Redacted by going to mybrightcore.com/redacted, or even better, you'll get 50% off and free shipping if you just jump on the phone with these guys and develop a relationship with them. They're an American company. They have a team dedicated to our show specifically. So call them 1-888-404-6311 to get up to 50% off and free shipping. I'm telling you, this is part of my daily supplement routine. It is fantastic. Check them out today. Get 25% off with that code by going to mybrightcore.com/redacted, or get 50% off by just jumping on the phone 888-404-6312. Thanks to Brightcore. Well, organ harvesting, another conspiracy theory proven true. Under RFK Jr., the Department of Health and Human Services released this report showing that U.S. hospitals have been harvesting organs from patients who weren't dead. Here's the report. It showed that in the hundreds of cases that HHS reviewed of organ donations, nearly 1/3 of the patients, 30%, showed signs of life at the time their organs were taken from them. These patients either had not died or still showed neurological signs incompatible with organ donation. Like, they're still alive. Who cares? Just go in and take their liver. I mean, this is like Ukrainian level stuff here.
I just wonder, how do hospitals not know the difference between dead and alive? Isn't that like the first thing you learn in medical school?
You would think.
Is how to know when someone's not dead?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jacob Boyens has been studying and warning about organ harvesting and human trafficking. He's now urging Congress to establish dedicated human trafficking courts, and he joins us today. Does he? Yes. Okay. He does join us today. Thank you so much for joining us. This report calls this taking of live organs a lack of training, they say. They say it only happens sometimes. It doesn't tell us really whether there's pressure to get those organs, where they go. Do you buy that?
Not at all. Thank you for having me on the show, and a great segment with the previous guest, and so much going on here. When we really talk about human trafficking, I think where America is losing the battle in human trafficking is it doesn't truly understand the breadth of the industry. So organ harvesting is very prevalent around the world. I recall last year, November, I meet with the vice chairman of Interpol out of Nigeria, and he's saying, Yaku, just heads up, organ harvesting cartels and sects are moving across the southern border under the Biden administration. It's well documented around the world of people waking up with a kidney missing, saying, call law enforcement, call the hospital. Organs are valuable, and they're marketed through American hospitals. And it's not a faux pas. This is not a misstep. or we don't know what's dead and what's alive. We're doing microscopic surgery from different states on patients that are alive with robots, for crying out loud, in this country. No, it's an industry that's part of human trafficking. And you said it earlier, follow the money. When you start looking at how Wall Street benefited from an Epstein cabal, how Wall Street is benefiting from organ harvesting, how we're banking the sale of human beings and children and organs in this country. Unfortunately, we have now in the international community been made aware of that. The organ harvesting rings, the leading rings around the world, are all setting up shop in the United States. And yes, they have come across our borders in the last 4 years to say, well, there's money to be made, and when there is demand, there'll be supply.
I mean, where do these organs go?
A lot of the organs are actually funneled through the legal systems. As you see here in this report, how our RFK is saying, look, we're going to revoke your license. You've got to come up to compliance. You have to rewrite internal protocol. So if you really pay attention, when people speak, listen, they'll tell you who they are. The internal protocol is written so loose within the hospital systems that they create holes like Swiss cheese where they can slip through the cracks. A lot of the organs are funneled through the legal system. This is not even black market. There's a huge black market organ, a black market for children's organs. A child heart at $12,000, for instance, in America at the moment. Child under 12. That heart goes for $12,000 in the black market. This is what we're talking about here, that RFK is uncovering, is within the legal system, within the hospital system, where nurses, medical reps are on the take, doctors know. And this is, we're talking about taking life prematurely in order to harvest a particular organ. And it's well documented here, and good for RFK. I have said before, I think he will be the secretary under this administration that will go down with the most victories, because he's actually kicking over the correct rocks. He's looking at the right place.
The report doesn't say ages. It didn't even occur to me that they would be children, so that's horrific. Here's what puts my spidey sense up. The report says this happens mostly in rural, small hospitals in poorer communities. Now, obviously, poorest populations are the most vulnerable. They're the least likely to make a ruckus. They're least likely to afford a lawyer to sue. This obviously is very suspicious. What do you make of that?
Human trafficking, so we started fighting human trafficking in 1994 when my sister was trafficked. 6 years, took us 6 years to rescue Ilanka. 2001, 2010, we had no laws for minors. 2015, all of a sudden, we rewrite the definition. Human trafficking is the exploitation of persons, whether it's an organ or sex or debt bondage, the exploitation of persons through the mechanisms of force, fraud, coercion. Really, in layman's term, what is it? It's the exploitation of vulnerability. Rural communities are more vulnerable. They're not loud. They don't get attention. A child in the projects is easier to traffic than a child that is in a stable community. But it's still a hospital. It's still licensed. It still carries federal and state licenses. It's not operating outside of licensure. It's still within the constitutional law of the United States. It's a hospital. It's just easier to hide these crimes in small communities where the sheriff runs the town, where you can control the police chief, where people are on the take. But it happens in major hospitals too. I do not want us to believe that it's just in rural communities. This is very prevalent throughout our country. It's not as prevalent as sex trafficking by number. It's not as prevalent as maybe debt trafficking or labor trafficking. But one is too many. One human being whose life is taken to take their organ is too many.
I mean, I just think it all sounds so incredibly demonic to me. The idea that a child's heart, a child's liver, a child's whatever is being transplanted into another child, it doesn't sound like that's happening here. It seems to me these things are being used in our research for pretty nefarious purposes. You're not taking a heart from a child and putting it in another child. Is that your experience here?
Well, can I just make a distinction at what I think the report says is that these people died because of it. Like, they were not quite dead. We don't know what they would have died otherwise. They were on the verge of death, and then they died. It wasn't people who were otherwise okay, and oops, there's no kidney anymore, right?
You're nailing it. And if you would only know what happened through COVID with organ harvesting,
Okay.
you can only imagine. Some of the leading organ harvesting experts in the world are friends of mine, and we have investigated this for decades. Through COVID, when you start talking about COVID protocol and you can't see grandma and she's in the hospital and she is on COVID protocol, the nefarious activities, you're right, it is induced death for the purpose of harvesting an organ as soon as possible. This is family members that were told, sorry, we couldn't save your loved one, but there was neurological function. You know, maybe one kidney was shutting down, but there's a second kidney. This is induced death. This particular report that RFK uncovered, that the secretary uncovered, is talking about within HHS, induced death. People are led to
Killing
death.
people. You killed them. That's murder.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is murder. This is murder. This might be the most egregious. This is looking at a human being going, you have no value. Now, if you look at our culture today in society.
Someone who went into the hospital to live. You don't go to the hospital if you want to die.
These are the spawns of Satan. This is demonic at the nth degree. It is to steal, kill, destroy. This is to look at a human being going, you have no value. What can you offer me? What commodity? How can I commoditize you? Sex? Great, we'll do sex. Labor? What do you see the left screaming all day long today? Don't take our slave workers. Don't take the people that we can pay minimum wage. Don't talk about deportations. Oh, so you want to underpay folks. So you think some people are less than. To the point where you would kill somebody to take an organ. Now, to your point earlier, is it necessarily a direct transplant? We don't, the numbers are not a science yet. We're looking at that. But what I can tell you is causation and correlation. I can tell you that in sex trafficking, there is a radical spike that now a third of the cases, we do rescues every week, of sex trafficking of American children and American adults. A third of our cases now have spiritual ritual abuse. McKinney, Texas, we go into an apartment and there's blood sacrifice with organs and animals' organs. So it's not all necessarily for transplant. As egregious as it is, we have cults and culture that have moved into America that is not part of our foundation. Our Constitution was written off of the Word of God. There is literal blood sacrifice consumption of human tissue in this country. It is a combination of demonic activity. And yes, at times within the organized system, it is transplants, but it's all of it and not as prevalent as sex trafficking, but way too prevalent. This is America. I'm from Africa. I'm a legal immigrant to this country. I'm from South Africa. We've got voodoo, black magic, and witchcraft in Uganda and South Sudan and Sierra Leone. We know this. We understand them eating a heart of a child and they believe they have eternal life. Not in America, but now I'm telling you, yes, in America.
Yeah, and as someone in the chat just says, this is much bigger than even we're talking about now. This is a massive story, absolutely disgusting and demonic. You're going to be testifying in front of Congress, I think, next week. Is that correct? What are you hoping to
Yeah, with this new court, thank you. We are instituting with Aiken Law. This is 2 years in the making. Really, where we're failing in the human trafficking conversation is the judiciary. Nobody's ever touched the judiciary. And we just published the white paper where we have bipartisan support, believe it or not, from Senate and Congress now to say, look, the judiciary is failing the American people. American people want justice. What do they want for Epstein? And I differ for some of the comments of your previous guest, we have to remember the survivor, not victim. There has to be justice for the survivor. And sometimes the survivors cannot speak. They are minors. They cannot speak up. So the judiciary fails them because Congress has codified law. Congress has done a great job over the last 20 years making anti-human trafficking law, funded 41 task forces, fund studies, etc. The justice system fails the American citizen consistently. Why? Because they plead it down. Human trafficking cases are not human trafficking cases. What did they do with Diddy? They dropped the sex trafficking charges the Friday before. They took RICO away, and all of a sudden it's transportation and prostitution. It'll always be kidnapping or drugs that they'll go for, but not human trafficking. The Justice Department do not want to prosecute these cases because of who's involved, because of the money involved. Because think about this for 1 second. Today in America, you can bank in a federal bank the sale of a human being's organ, legal or illegal. You can bank sex trafficking capital gained, but you can't bank marijuana. Not that I think you should be able to bank marijuana, but we're stricter on marijuana than we are on stealing organs and selling children for sex. It's time for Wall Street to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is one of the darkest. I've talked about it openly on the show many, many times over the past couple of years. Sex trafficking.
Organ trafficking.
Organ trafficking is America's darkest secret. And would you say it's the largest operation in the world in America?
So the sale of women and children, this is not boys and men, and boys are on the rise at epic rates, but women and children alone, okay? And which is predominantly 97% female, right? So women and children alone, it's $152 billion a year spent in the world to buy and sell women and children for sex. A third of that, $52 billion, is inside the 50 states of the United States on American children. We're not talking about the hundreds of thousands of migrant kids. Separate conversation. American children. We have commoditized and monetized the sale of human beings, their organs, their time, their bodies, their sex. America is the leading nation on planet Earth, commercializing it, and supply meets demand.
Now, I have two more questions. Do you think that doctors are somehow incentivized to take an organ when a patient and maybe sold a bill of goods, like this guy's going to die, let's just take it, you'll get this? You know, I mean, we know that doctors were paid to push COVID shots and other vaccines. So is there some kind of like explanation why a doctor would do this?
Yes, there is. Look, money is always an objective, right? But sometimes it's compromise. And can I draw a correlation real quick? Sure. Sex is a very powerful weapon for good created by God. Healthy sex between a husband and a wife actually drives evil out of the home. Pornography corrupts. It's ripping American families apart. Well, sex is also the greatest tool to compromise. Sex is an amazing weapon for intelligence agencies to compromise high-ranking officials, to compromise doctors. So you'll see sex trafficking doctors, COVID, very compromised. They threaten doctors with their licenses. We're going to oust you. You're going to lose your career. We're going to blackball you, right? Organ harvesting is they have something on a doctor, they invite him in, they entice him with, look, here's an extra $85,000 a year you can make off the books. No one knows. Cash free, cash money. And they partake. Why is it successful? Because they bait to the carnality of man. Man is corrupt in its nature unless it surrenders itself with a holy conviction and repentance to God and live with a righteous and just life. So when you present on the tray the poison apple, mankind in its nature takes it. And once one doctor compromises, maybe not by taking an organ, by cutting a corner. So here's what they do. And I have people inside the medical community, nurses and doctors that are whistleblowers that'll say, Yaku, it doesn't start with taking an organ. It starts with cutting a corner on a procedure. And we identify the doctors that will cut corners. We identify the doctors that would be on the take. Just like it could identify a police officer or a pastor that won't talk about pornography or sodomy. And they identify them and they sell them. They sell them this, hey, there's money here in the system. They train them how to do it in the system. This is not a warehouse where they're cutting a liver out of a kid in some back alley. That's not how America does white collar. We're trafficking children while they go to school. We're cutting organs out of people in the hospital on the books.
Okay. All right. So then presumably this is something that HHS could do something about. I have one more question, and I hesitate to ask it because I know organ donation does save lives. But this very much gives me pause about being an organ donor because I don't want anything taken while I'm still alive. So should this appropriately give us pause about being an organ donor?
I think it should give us pause not to not help mankind, right? Not to donate tissue for research, but it should give us pause to say, well, perhaps we need to look at a state level within policy and legislation. Perhaps we need to draft some policy around the access of family, around the proof of current condition of a patient. Because again, when you looked at COVID, I have a family member that went in with a urinary tract infection, that all of a sudden died from COVID 7 days later because they were put on protocol with remdesivir, and we could not talk to the patient, talk to the doctor. There was no explanation. That kind of behavior goes on post-COVID. Perhaps there needs to be some codifying of policy around when someone wants to donate an organ to be a supporting citizen to mankind, that there perhaps needs to be more transparency and access, proof, second, third opinion, perhaps, and then,
okay.
in that field.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you for coming on Redacted. It was a pleasure to talk to you about this horrific story. But we have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Coming up, we're going to talk about how the European Union has said no bake sales to raise money for Gaza. They're starving, but you can't have bake sales because it will hurt Jewish people's feelings, they say. What do they think about Jewish people? I wonder if they need this kind of coddling. We're going to talk about that. But before we do, Clayton will tell us about our friends over at Lear.
I will. But, it's not what's being said loud enough right now. War can wipe out our financial future as well. Right now, the United States is on a dangerous, unsustainable path. We just saw the Genius Act go into effect last week. Of course, this could be considered like a Hail Mary in many ways to try to save the U.S. dollar. If you think about it, right, trying to tie the U.S. dollar to stable coins with crypto, I mean, it could be a genius move, or it could be really a last-ditch effort by the United States government because the Fed has essentially destroyed the U.S. dollar. It's driving it into the ground. That's why all these other countries are hoarding as much gold as they can right now. They're dumping U.S. treasuries like a bad habit. Again, because they understand America's debt is unsustainable. So when China's dumping treasuries at record levels like they did over the past few weeks, this is troubling. So what do we do as Americans? Do we tie our family's future to the U.S. dollar, which continues to lose buying power year in, year out? It's incredibly difficult now for young people to buy a home. I mean, having to wait till 38 years old to be first-time home buyers in the United States. How the hell did that happen? We've devalued our American currency to a level that's unbelievably unsustainable. We are heading for a disaster. That's why we're big proponents of making sure you protect your family. And you don't have to. I mean, you don't have to protect your family if you don't want to. If you want to continue to hold U.S. dollars, that's totally up to you. But we've been sending the warning signals for a while now to be investing in things that are tangible. Silver, gold, real estate, actual tangible items to the best of your ability. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but if you've got like $1,000 sitting in US dollars, can you convert that over to gold, silver, precious metals to protect your family? And that's exactly what we do. And you can use any company you want, but the one that we personally use, my son with his IRA just started investing. We were teaching him how to start to buy silver and buy gold, and we use Lear Capital to do it. And they've been a longtime sponsor of our show for years now. And this is who we use to buy gold coins, silver coins. You can buy them and store them in your gun safe in your own house, or you can store them in an off-site facility. Totally up to you. If you've got a large amount, maybe you don't want to have that sitting in your home. Again, it's totally up to you. There are facilities around the world that will protect you, from Singapore to Switzerland to the United States, where you can store your gold and silver. Get on the phone with them. They're an American company. Just have a conversation with them. It's totally free to talk with them. And they can send you their precious metals investing guide for free. Sit down at your kitchen table with your loved ones and talk about it, and have a conversation about it. Again, no commitment at all. They're an education company first. 1-800-613-3557 is the 800 number just to call them to get your free guide for precious metals, or just go to the website, learredacted.com, and check them out there. But I prefer, just get on the phone with them and have a phone call with them. They're a great team to get you set up investing in precious metals. 1-800-613-3557. Call our friends at Lear Capital today and tell them we sent you.
Well, we are watching children and families starve in Gaza, but don't even think about trying to do anything about it, and especially don't try and hold a bake sale to raise money. European leaders were scolded for holding a bake sale to raise money for the Red Cross in Gaza because EU officials said that it made Jews feel uncomfortable. A leaked document shows that the EU staff in Brussels organized a good old-fashioned bake sale last May to raise funds for the Red Cross in Gaza. But the EU's anti-Semitic czar, that's a real job.
Can you imagine?
We don't have to imagine. She exists. Her name is Katharina von Schnerbing. I don't think I said that nicely, but that's how I think it's spelled. She objected. She warned that it could stoke anti-Jewish sentiment and claimed that it helped the media ignore Israel providing food in Gaza because, hey, they're not really starving. Israel's providing aid for them. Well, let's check in how that's going, shall we? Israel threw out UN workers a few months ago, claiming that they were tied to Hamas and said, oh, no, we're going to handle it ourselves. And they've outsourced the job to U.S. contractors, although no one is really clear on who's funding it. So how's that going, Clayton? How do you think that's going?
Oh, I'm sure it's going well. A lot of this food has just been sitting there spoiling or not being able to be delivered to aid sites. And when they are being delivered, they're being shot at when they're going to these aid sites.
Yeah, let me just, I'll just summarize it for you. People are starving to death. The Gaza Health Ministry reports a sharp rise in starvation deaths. And I'm sure you've seen these horrific images circulating online. Now, Zionist apologists will say, oh no, Gaza Health Ministry, those numbers are inflated. That's not, we don't really need to feel upset about that at all. They're just trying to get your sympathy. Well, the Wall Street Journal, hardly a fringe outlet, sent reporters to observe food distribution firsthand, and they published this really damning article over the weekend. This is not alternative media, you guys. This is the Wall Street Journal reporting it straight-faced. There are only 4 aid stations in all of Gaza, and the hours are unpredictable. No one really knows when it's going to be open, according to the Journal. Israel says they will open more, but they don't say when. They don't say where. When these stations are open, IDF soldiers admit to firing machine guns and artillery into civilian crowds. Here, Israeli soldiers admit they have fired rifles, machine guns, and even artillery when crowds veered off approved routes or took shortcuts. Soldiers said shots are fired around the crowds to warn them off, but at times directly at people who move in their direction. Now look at this last sentence here. Israeli military says it tries to avoid gunfire, and they review each incident to learn from it to reduce harm. So maybe we killed some civilians. We'll review that later, and we will learn from it, they say.
We'll
you
learn
guys,
from it.
how the heck is this reality? They say
well,
best
what are you shooting at in the
practices-
first place?
Right.
Well,
yeah, there's food
people-
there. People that are there getting their food. We're picking off the terrorists. As they
We
come to get
fired
food.
into a
like-
group of civilians and we accidentally hit a civilian.
Right. Shocking.
Yeah, good point. It's like they were in a line. One person put a toe out of line. I believe, though, that those are the stories we were told about Nazi Germany and concentration camps. But, okay, we're doing that again.
While Israelis military is learning from their mistakes, do the people they shoot for getting out of place, what do they get to learn? Nothing.
Yeah,
Right.
death. They learn death.
Yeah,
how to
they're
be
learning
dead.
nothing. Great point.
Yeah. Here they say that best practices are they're supposed to shoot at their knees, which is awful enough. But sometimes they miss and they just murder them. Can we put up that screen there? It says, mistakes happen. That's what they say. We're supposed to shoot at their knees, but sometimes we have a mistake and they kill them. Okay. A quick reminder why the Israeli military has to distribute food in the first place, because when Israel began the war after October 7th, they began by systematically destroying all food systems in Gaza. This, too, is not conspiracy. This comes straight from the mouth of IDF soldiers. From this report we told you about a couple months ago called The Perimeter, from a group called Breaking the Silence, which is former IDF soldiers. They describe in detail the grunt work of using what they call the doobie, means the teddy bear in Hebrew, to destroy agriculture, foods, factory, homes along a perimeter in Gaza. This is the teddy bear. By the way, I found this image on Flickr, uploaded, I presume, by an Israeli who thought the rainbow flag was a blessing for the doobie. They have also used mines that are meant for underwater destruction, but they're using it above ground, putting themselves at risk. We know because when Israeli soldiers are killed, mostly it's because the buildings they are blowing up collapse on top of them because it's incredibly unsafe work, this demolition work. According to the report, what they were destroying when they first got started, now this has been for 2 years almost, was mainly fields, agriculture, olive trees, eggplant fields, livestock as well. So why don't the Palestinians have food? because the Israeli army destroyed it. That's why. One soldier in this report, it really breaks my heart, expressed sadness that this industrial area was once there as an industrial zone set up by the Oslo Accords, which was supposed to be a way that Israelis and Palestinians were going to live in peace and prosperity together, but they've been meant to destroy it. Even this IDF soldier says it makes him really sad to have had to do it, but that's what he was told to do. Now, if you pretend to care about Jewish lives, you would speak out against this, because the soldiers who have been tasked with this are committing suicide at even higher levels than ever before due to the trauma. Haaretz, which is an Israeli paper, reports that suicide rates among Israeli soldiers are up since October of 2023, with at least one reservist dying by suicide in a burned out car, multiple others affected by PTSD and trauma. Internal figures suggest that these are underreported numbers and not isolated cases at all. And it reveals the emotional trauma of having to do this to people. The Gaza operations, the shooting at people at aid stations, watching vulnerable people. So, yeah, when you pretend to care about Jewish lives, you have to look at these Jewish soldiers suffering because of what they are made to do. So given this reality, can you blame any warm-blooded human for wanting to bake a tray of cookies and have a bake sale for Gaza? That's literally the least we can do. But clearly the European Union is not run by warm-blooded humans. So let us know what you think of this.
Douglas Dauntless says redacted is virtue signaling. Virtue signaling.
How? What did I do? I didn't bake any cookies.
We didn't bake any cookies. Also, we hate genocide and ethnic cleansing. So that's my virtue, and I'm signaling it to you. We're pretty much anti-war.
Man, you must think a lot of yourself for that opinion.
Anti-genocide, anti-ethnic cleansing on this show. So yes, that's our virtue, and we're signaling it to you.
But the whole Israel is just defending itself against terrorist narrative falls apart the moment you start bulldozing crops. Like how many
Yeah.
Like what they're like, well, we'll starve the terrorists too. Like no, at that point it's a medieval siege. You might
no. Mm-hmm. You would have to be mentally retarded to believe that narrative anymore. We've shown you the billions, nearly trillions of dollars of natural gas and oil off the coast of Palestine. We know exactly what the mission and motive here is. It's a land grab. It's money. It's not Israel defending itself from terrorists. You'd have to be mentally retarded to believe that. And if you are mentally retarded, seek help, because that ship has sailed a long time ago. And if you call out the BS, you're labeled an anti-Semite, or whatever, screw you. We're done with that. That ship has sailed. I'm sick of that.
We had a viewer ask me to tell you to stop using that word. And I would say that even people who have mental retardation probably understand this. That may be even, beyond mentally retarded. Like, you would have to be just so committed to a lying propagandist narrative. You have to be
ignorant.
Willfully. It has nothing to do with mental disability at this point. I think it has to be willful to look away from this.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay.
Nothing funny anymore in our chat says, Palestine is actually very, very rich. Yeah, it's amazing that the BP, British Petroleum, would never really want to work with the Palestinians, actually extricate that oil and natural gas from those lands, because of course the British, we know exactly what the British did to break up that area and hand it over to the Israelis. So they've never been able to extricate all of those riches. Imagine what it would look like if Palestine was able to enrich itself in the same way that Norway was, and able to get all of that oil off the coast of Norway, became the most profitable country in the world by GDP, Norway. So what's the difference? Well, clearly we know what the difference is. You're not stupid. It's just so disgusting. Anyway, I'm sick of it.
Well, you can't be sick of it, because it's not stopping. I really don't know. I have a good friend today who really loved the Superman movie, has loved Superman his whole life. And he says, I can't go see it again, even though I loved it, because I can't watch this knowing that it's real, knowing that there are armies attacking children in the same way. It's too much to watch, and
no one's doing anything about it.
And we have no divine intervention. We have no superhero. We have nothing. We can do nothing except sit here together and talk about it while we are allowed. That's literally the least we can do. I would love to bake some cookies. They won't make it there, right? So anyhow.
So Jay the Exorcist Batman says it's mostly gas in Norway. Is it though? We went to Norway and we toured the oil museum there where, I mean, it was, I think if I'm not mistaken.
It's LNG. I think a lot of it is liquid natural gas.
So it is, okay.
But they do have, they have both.
Tony says, I'm sick of it too, Clayton. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Greater Israel Project is real, Red Syrup says. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this has always been about a land grab from the very beginning. This is what this has all been about. It's not about, we're stopping terrorists. That's why they had to create Hamas. You needed the catalyst. They literally created Hamas, Israel and the United States. And the United States armed them, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. So we needed to create the terrorist in order to land grab. That's exactly what this is about. Wake up. Don't be an idiot. And you guys know better than that. Just
right, but look what we're observing, right? We're observing the weaponization of language to squash dissent is being deflated. So people are, you can call anti-Semitic, you can say we're Russian apologists, you can say all of these things, and those terms are losing steam. And I think that that's encouraging. So we have to look at some silver linings. At least we are still allowed to talk about this. At least those words, they still work on Congress, but they don't work on us. Right. And so, okay, let's observe that as the only silver lining I've got for you right now.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
All right. Hey, we want to take maybe a look at your super chats here in a second and hang out for a minute. But first.
But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at American Financing, because how would you like to delay and get out of 2 mortgage payments? Well, that's right. Imagine putting those 2 payments in your pocket, giving yourself and your budget a little breathing room. Well, that's possible with American Financing. If you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, groceries, gas bills, you're not alone. Gas prices are still up, I have noticed, at least in Colorado. Most Americans are putting those expenses on credit cards, and there just doesn't seem to be a way out. But American Financing can show you how to use your home equity to pay off your debt. It's a tool that many wealthy people do. The big Wall Street commercials scare you about it, but all you have to do is learn it, do the calculations, and see if it works for you. American Financing has salary-based mortgage consultants that will help you restructure your loan and consolidate your debt, all without upfront fees. And they're saving their customers an average of $800 a month. That's like a $10,000 per year raise. It's simple, and it could save your budget this summer. So call now before it's too late. Call them at 866-890-8434 or head on over to americanfinancing.net/redacted. One more time, that's americanfinancing.net/redacted, NMLS number 182334. You can go to nmlsconsumeraccess.org and find out more, or just go to americanfinancing.net/redacted.
All right. So Drew, thank you for your $1.99 super chat, says, son of a glitch. Yeah, we had some glitches today. I'm not sure exactly what is going on with our ISP, but we're looking into it. So we've sent a lot of notes to the team on that. I'm not sure exactly what's happening with that. Sorry about that. Kudos Miracle says, love the truth you share, Redacted. Do you want to learn the truth about the solutions, the biggest problems we all face? Kudos Miracles is the answer. Reach out to its founder, Matt Allen. All right. Thank you. Kudos. Mike Campbell, $9 super chat. Does seem that ever changes and corruption continue unabated. Truth gets slipperier. This world seems beyond repair. Greed for the almighty dollar and quest for power is the world's disease. Thank you to Frank Aiello for becoming a new channel member as well. Rest in peace, Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah, rest in peace, Ozzy. He passed away. Did he pass away today?
I think it was today. He had suffered from Parkinson's for a really long time, although the cause of death has not been reported. But he looked like, he was in the marginal decade for sure. I hope he's no longer in pain.
Maddie England says Zio shills are seething. Are the Zio shills? Are the Zionist shills hanging out today? I don't know if they really hang out on our show, do they? There's probably a lot of Hasbara monkeys that love to internet troll.
I don't see very many, except one person says cancel Redacted, get a real job. I wonder if that's because they're a Zionist. This is the real job. I work really hard.
Yeah, we work really hard at the show.
What do you do, friend?
No, I guess if you're a Zionist and you will kind of go to the mat, you're very pro genocide, pro ethnic cleansing. You'll just go to the mat on this. You don't like any dissenting voices, so it really doesn't matter. I mean,
I suppose that's true.
You're not gonna support a show like this that's not afraid to tell the truth. Clifford says, "Love your hard work, Redacted. Thank you so much. Appreciate that." No, I have good friends in Israel, good friends in Tel Aviv specifically. I think their government is demonic. I think Benjamin Netanyahu is a demon. I'm open. I say that to them publicly and openly. There's no love lost there at all. In fact, I'm friends with someone who used to work for Benjamin Netanyahu specifically, and says how corrupt he is. Like, he worked in Tel Aviv, would tell me personally what a corrupt man that guy is. So hearing that right from their mouths about how corrupt they are. Eternal Vigilance. Redacted is awesome. Still glad you guys you left Fox. Fox is just as bad or worse than MSNBC and CNN. Thank you.
It's
so
a
much.
uniparty. We think it's both sides of the same coin. So yeah, we're glad not to be beholden to mainstream media.
Jason Hines says, Redacted rocks. Thank you so much. Tony says, I don't know how you guys do it. I don't know how you do it. It is hard. I mean, we're not going to pat ourselves on the back, but, I think, I don't know. We just spend time reading and focusing on stories that the mainstream media ignores and try to educate ourselves. And look, I did 2 interviews today, long form interviews before the show. Absolutely blew my mind. I mean, so I'm just like constantly learning, like I don't know these things, and I'm just like spending the time listening to people and just being open about it and being curious about it.
I mean, literally the reason I think that most of you show up here, even though none of us like what we're reporting, is what the heck else are we going to do? You can't know this stuff and then go out in the world and pretend you don't know it. So we need each other. We need you, Yeah. I hope you need us in this community. And like, I want to look away from it all the time, but you cannot go back. You can't unplug yourself back into the matrix. You just can't. That's how we do it.
I have lost so many friends because I can't.
Yeah. But, well, you gained us, right?
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I had you, but I just kept you through all of it.
Okay.
That's right.
Right.
No, it's true. I mean, we were talking to Neil Oliver in Scotland a few weeks ago, and, they've lost so many friends. They lost because they were telling the truth about COVID, and they had people that were like, you can't be saying that against the National Health Service. You can't be talking out about this. And you know what? They lost a lot of friends. We lost a lot of friends for the same reasons. And so, you know what? I think we're better off for it. And I don't have to deal with these morons in my life.
Yeah, that's the reason. Not because you have an obnoxious wife.
Yeah, I mean, I have an obnoxious wife, but I love her. She's very obnoxious.
I take a lot of credit for alienating well-intentioned people.
That's all right. So thank you guys. Hey, we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. You should all sign up for it. Just go to redacted.inc, put in your email address, and you will receive a welcome email from us. And you just have to make sure it doesn't go to your spam folder, drag it over to your inbox, and then confirm that click the link in there, confirm that you want to receive the newsletter Monday through Thursday. We cover a lot of the stories you might have missed overnight. Things, market news, gold prices, silver prices, all of that stuff is in there. And you can read it in about 5 or 10 minutes over your cup of coffee in the morning. Although we have a lot of Australian viewers and people around the world, so you might be reading it at nighttime as well. We saw a bunch of people watching us from Norway today, so you might be reading it in the middle of the afternoon when you receive it after lunchtime. So it doesn't matter, but just go to redacted.inc and sign up for a free daily newsletter. And we thank you guys so much for joining us here on this Taco Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. Be safe, everyone. And if you've got an obnoxious wife,
stick with it.
Stick with her. Stick with her.
Life's more interesting.
Yeah, it's great. It's really great. We'll see you tomorrow.